prepositional phrase structure and the verb give. And these errors seem to persist quite considerably all the way through the levels. And there's even a plateau there in the middle at the B level and the beginning C level, where it seems they just can't get over these prepositional problems. Here are some examples with give. These are persistent error patterns that you find across the levels. I will give a phone call for you. That's an A2 example there, where the preposition is incorrect, not appropriate. It's important for me because my mother gave to me. Another common confusion at this A2 level is that they work hard on the prepositional structure, but you don't get any realization of the direct object. So the direct object is missing there. At B1 we get, maybe you can keep my work and you can give to me the next day. Correct preposition, but direct object missing. And then B1, I own a lovely old table, which I've loved since I saw it 3 years ago in my uncle's house. So this person can handle relative clauses, subordinate clauses, and time clauses, and so on. And then he or she says, he gave me because he moved to Londrina. So again, we have that. The preposition is right, but the direct object is missing. So you've got this complex kind of error pattern going on. But by and large, by the time you get up to, as I said earlier, up to C1, you've managed the direct object, indirect object pattern, but there are residual problems with prepositions. If we go on to another verb, this is the verb send, which operates in a similar way. We find that by C2, there are no longer any errors that record any significance statistically at C2. By C2, you've got it sorted with send. But notice the prepositional errors are still considerable right down to, or right up to, I should say, the C1 level, though most of them will be focused on this B level. The A level is always slightly odd because you're working with a smaller lexicon, very narrow knowledge of grammar, so at that level you might know the verb give, but you've no idea how to use it. You might know the word send, but you've no idea how to use it. So, you know, give is a very common verb. You're going to meet it all the time, and you're probably going to know it before you even start your English course. But knowing its patterns is going to be massive at the A1. So in the spirit of this talk, it's the B1, B2 area, this threshold area that interests us most. And the picture that's coming out is that the prepositional option is where most of the problems are. So that's maybe an area that needs a lot of consolidation, a lot of recycling, revision at B1 and B2. The next screen shows some examples with send. And again, persistent error patterns are similar to those with give. I hope you can send me as soon as possible. It's a nice one, isn't it? Of course, you're not going to send the person. You're going to send something to the person. Send me it or send it to me as soon as possible. Please send me by post. That's the one I like. You do find some lovely examples in the corpus. Please send me by post. Please send it to me by post. Please send me it by post. If you want more information, I will send to you. And that's at C1. So errors or confusions are still there. And what's happening is it's not so much, we hesitate to use the word error. It's that there's so much going on. There is so much input, so many things competing in the brain, as it were, that what happens is they get jumbled, and you get half of one and half of the other. If we take the verb to buy bought, we find a much simpler picture. We find that by B2, it's cleared. They've got it, you know? So these three verbs, give, send, and buy, behave in three quite different ways when the student tries to realize them in grammatical realizations. So what do we learn from that? We learn surely that there's not much point in just giving abstract rules about the position of direct objects and indirect objects as a sort of empty pattern, kind of Chomskyan view, you know, that there's this underlying structure and all you have to do is fill it in and you'll be okay. It's the what you fill it in with which creates the problems. You know, you need to learn the grammar of each of these verbs. You need to learn the preposition. You buy something for somebody, but you give something to somebody. And it's those prepositions which often create that sort of confusion. You get people making dinner to somebody, that sort of thing. And here are some of the examples with buy, and our same old friends are coming up. I bought at you, that's a nice one, isn't it? I bought at you a shirt for your birthday. That's an A2 error, prepositional error. And at B1, we're going to buy some expensive presents to him. And then after that, it seems that buy ceases to be a problem. Now, this may be because contexts like the Cambridge examinations are always asking people to suggest what they might buy for somebody and how they're going to send it and what they might give. So you get a large number of these, and maybe buying is, people are always talking about shopping. You know, given that you can't talk about anything else in English language textbooks anymore, because you have to be so politically correct, most publishers insist that, you know, shopping and sport, and that's your lot, mate, you know. So it's not perhaps surprising that we get a lot of emphasis on these verbs. But the point I'm trying to make is that you can't just make a blanket statement, oh, they can't handle the direct object prepositional phrase structure. They can, at different levels and with different verbs. It's time for us to return to our questions. We're going to actually stop in about 5 or 10 minutes and open the floor to discussion where you'll be able to hurl brickbats at us or hurl anything you like. Hurl your iPods at us if you wish. We're going to come back to these original questions and see to what extent they can be answered with something that is useful. And I'm going to ask my two co-presenters to actually stand up at this point because we're going to contribute together to commenting on the questions that we raised. The first question is, what are the items and structures that need to be addressed in a B-level grammar? And in some ways, it's all of them. And you know, that's the honest answer. You need a wide range. You don't need everything. But the B1, the B level is, as we've seen, this point where learners classically cross the threshold and the learning curve goes massively steeply up, and it involves all sorts of problems and issues for the learners. But as Anne pointed out, one of the reasons it goes up is there is so much activity going on. So I don't know whether you want to comment further on either of that point.
As I tried to illustrate what the learner is doing at A level with the present and past simple takes a massive leap at the B level, where they're trying to use subordination and relative clauses. As Mike illustrated, they're using more complexity within the phrase level. They're challenged then to find the right preposition to go with the new vocabulary item. So at the B level, just so many structures that are seemingly simple and could be left at A level, they really need to be recycled in their, I suppose, more complex forms at the B level.
Do you want to say anything to that?
And also the fact that just because we've taught something once, and we use the term we've done the present simple, we've done this, we've done that we're constantly needing to recycle and lay down layers of a structure rather than just assuming that a structure has a sort of a closed set of things that there are to say about it. That as learners go through, they create more and more layers of complexity within a structure. And to assume that because we've taught something doesn't mean that the error isn't going to persist.
Yeah, and as the new structures are taught, new confusions emerge, as you showed with the past perfect, and as these things come in, they start getting confused with the past simple. So you need a very, very wide range of available repertoire for the B1, B2 learner, and an astonishingly wide range. Of course, there are some things that can be left to, well, to relative obscurity, you might say, like the subjunctive after verbs like insist. You know, they're as rare as dodo's eggs in any corpus that you look at. And we are constantly, we've talked a lot about the learner corpus here today, but we are constantly matching it against native speaker and expert user corpora, because you know, there is that distinction between the developmental, the learning process that goes on between A1 and C2, and the expert user, whether native speaker or non-native speaker, of whom we also have a considerable amount of corpus data and growing in the project. The next question that we addressed, the next question that we addressed was, how well do the items support the Keffer can-dos at the B level? And I'm going to ask Geraldine to answer this because she's already tried to put together what an example of this might look like.
Yes, well, we see again that it's an increase in the repertoire, and that the items that we see at B level, we have to interpret the can-dos in a way which is very grammatical rather than very functional. So we see these items expanding as we go through the levels.
So it's a way of getting away from the old kind of traditional, just communicative, functional underpinning of the can-dos to actually grammatical realizations of them.
Yeah, and absolutely, and different grammatical realizations depending on what the level is. You know, and making sure that the examples that we give are the correct grammatical realizations appropriate for that level.
And bringing in the lexicon as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's the one thing I think comes strongly out of it. And how are these B-level items and structures qualitatively different from the A-level ones? Well, it seems to me that the qualitative difference is the degree of subordination and embedding that we find around the exemplary items that we've taken today. And you could do that for more or less any of the major grammatical categories. That the qualitative difference is not, as Geraldine says, you don't do the past tense at A2 and then that's it, I've done it, I've got it. Because when you enter B1 and B2, you also enter a new level of complexity, which Anne exemplified with conditional structures, time clauses, relative clauses, and so on, which mean that the structures and items become embedded in a new layer of grammar. And that's where it seems some of the greatest difficulty is. And when we were putting together materials based on this, we found constantly that the only way to do it was endless repetition, so that sometimes we would say to our editors, do we really need to have this table here again in this part of the book that we wrote? And, you know, the editor would say, well, yes, you have to, because, you know, you need to contrast it with this particular category. So things keep coming back that you think are already done, but they come back in comparison with new things which we can objectively say are going to cause clashes and problems. It's not that we think that's going to happen. The whole point about the corpus underpinning is that's what has happened, not just because we think, oh, I had a group of students once from, you know, from lower somewhere or other, and oh, they always got in a mess with that. This is massive amounts of evidence from tens of thousands of, hundreds of thousands of students, where we can absolutely say with certainty that new layers of syntactic complexity and new lexical items are recreating problems that you thought were solved at earlier stages. Did you want to say anything, Anne?
I guess I was just thinking about the qualitative difference as well in terms of the grammar of the link between lexis and grammar. Between A and B level, the student has to learn not only so many new words,